Welcome to the season 1 finale of Women Just Like You. I'm your host, Audrey the Career Woman, and I just knew the final woman on my inaugural season had to be someone absolutely spectacular. Well, drum roll, please, because she's here. Our guest this week is not your daddy's lender, a social media star and a kick-ass mom, Theoni Rapo. She is sharing her mortgage and personal branding wisdom to her followers, nearly 200,000 of them across Instagram and TikTok on her page, Theoni the Lender. We went to college together, and wow, has Theoni taken the world by storm the last 8 years. Our conversation goes through 3 huge parts of Theoni's life: her career as a mortgage lender, her fame on social media, and her experience being a wife and a working mom to a little boy. Theoni lives on the Delaware beaches, pre-approving people for mortgages all over the U.S., and partners with her husband to build a future where they are billionaires. Why a billionaire, you may ask? Well, she's motivated by her family who immigrated to the US from Albania when she was a kid, and she just can't wait to retire her parents. Can you say inspirational or what? If you aren't inspired yet, you will be by the time our episode is over, so I've gone ahead and put everything you need to contact Theoni in our show notes today. Before we dive into the episode, I want to thank you, my listeners, for sticking with me this season. I hope you found inspiration from women just like you, because you are the reason why I'm here, to share stories of women in your exact shoes so you don't feel alone in your experiences. So I ask you to please share the show with the women in your life. Rate the show 5 stars and download the episodes you love the most so that we can get these stories to more women just like you too. I'll be continuing the story about my own career, the careers of women in my life, and behind the scenes of podcasting on my Instagram, Audrey the Career Woman. So I hope to see you on there. And with that, let's buckle up and dive into our season finale with Theoni the Lender. Theoni, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I'm so excited to chat with you, learn all about socials, your mortgage business, what it's like being a mom. I'm just so pumped to chat with you today.
I am so happy to have this conversation. Thank you for having me on, Audrey.
Sure thing. Yeah, we went to college together back at Washington College, but I'd love to start our conversation off going even further back from college, back when you were a kid. And I want to know, what did you want to be when you were a kid, when you grew up?
So this is one's funny. I always wanted to be the president of the United States, but I wasn't born here. So I got into like 5th or 6th grade before my parents were like, you need to find a new thing you want to be because you can't be that one. Like that is actually like really off the table. You can't do it because you weren't born here. And I was like, okay. And so after that, it was a dancer. Just like anything that seemed leadership or spotlight, I wanted to be.
Yeah, well, I think that's so great and really aspirational. And how about the dancer piece? How did that come about?
I've always I guess not a lot of people know because I don't really share this part of it. But when I was younger, I loved going to dance classes, anything like ballet and, anytime we would do the dance recitals and stuff like that, or the competitions, I would always be like, oh, I'm going to get up there and dance. And I don't know why, I just have always loved it. And I think it's the spotlight that's on you, but then also the practice that goes into it, which naturally then I got into sports and realized it's the same thing. You put the work in and then the spotlight's at the games.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. We all like a little spotlight, especially when we're a kid and we're like, yes. Look at me.
Yep. I was that girl.
Cool. Great. So let's kick off our conversation with just a little bit about your career. What have you done in your career to date?
Well, I got into mortgages when I was 18 years old, when I was still at Washington College. I was straight out of freshman year, and it originally started as a social media internship job for that summer. And I had no idea what a mortgage was. So I was going into this office every day and people were telling me how to market. And it was just a bunch of older people who didn't really even know how to use Facebook. So the job itself was very easy because we can just post on Facebook all the time. It was nothing for us. And then I started asking questions about what is it that you guys do? Because I can't market you properly if I don't understand what you do. And then I got really involved in that world. And it was an interesting time for me and my life, because I went to school, started as a political science major, and by the end of
Mhm.
freshman year realized that I did not want to do that at all. And so I knew I wanted to do something in like leadership and helping people, but not sure what. So this was kind of perfect because they
Mhm.
gave me a company laptop right after, and I went to school. And I've been a loan officer ever since. I started my time as an assistant, and then as of 2 years ago, I've gone 100% on my own, and my business is 100% referral and commission.
That's incredible to hear. You're kind of running your own business, you're doing your own thing. I think that's a good point too about, when you're a freshman in college, you don't really know what you want to be when you get out into the real world. So many people change their majors. Hard plug for a liberal arts education because you're literally forced to take so many different
Yeah.
classes and everything. I know I definitely benefited from that at Washington College. So it's really great to hear like you were able to make that pivot, go through that experience and make that switch and, be as successful as you are today. The home buying process can be really complicated with a lot of different parties involved. Can you share with our listeners what exactly you do as a mortgage banker, loan officer, and where you fall in that home buying process?
Yes. So I basically anything that has to do with money or qualifying you to take out that big mortgage loan is where I come in. And
Mhm.
so either to get set up for you to save enough to get that job that makes enough to move to that new city that requires you to get the job or whatever it is, that's kind of where I come in, where I will set you up and say, hey, if you make this income and you have these debts every month, here's how much you can qualify for. And then here's how much you're going to need for the closing costs and the down payment as well. And so that's daunting because nobody really even knows that
Yeah.
things are involved, like things like that are involved in buying a house. And so I always say it's never too early to start just talking to somebody, because there's been a lot of, I can't even tell you how many people from Washington College alone I pre-approved like the senior year of us being there without even graduating, so that they could know, once I get this job making this much, I need to pay off this in order to get to here. And
Mhm.
years later they come to me and they're like, hey Theoni, when we talked about XYZ in college, like I did all those things, and I have that job that's paying me that much. So you really can't ever talk to a loan officer like myself too soon.
That's so inspirational, honestly. It really sounds like you've found a spot, a career where you can really help people and you can help people immediately today, or you can help
Mhm.
people plan for the time when they actually need the physical help buying a home.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And the same thing. I mean, we'll talk about this, but I've leveraged my social media enough that as much as I love setting people up, I also obviously love helping people buy a house like today and right now in
Mhm.
this month.
Yeah.
And not that you have to be ready to buy right now to talk to someone. So that was the point that I'm trying to make, is don't make it seem like it's daunting if you aren't ready to buy yet. But I've gotten to a point now where with my social media that people do approach me when they are looking to buy like next month. And I
Mhm.
can certainly help with doing it that quickly too.
Mhm. Yeah, I know. I see your post and go, if you want to still buy in March, we got time. And there's like 2 weeks left. It's like, I don't know how you do it, girl, but like, good for you.
We have an incredible team. I work with literally the best team ever.
We love teamwork, don't we?
Yep.
So you just touched on it a little bit, but you obviously love helping people and you love working with your team. You got a stellar team. What do you love about your job?
I think the flexibility, if we're being totally
Mhm.
honest, because with this job, and it's not really a job because, like you said, you kind of build your own business.
Mhm.
If you don't show up, then you don't get paid, and that's just kind of how it is. But with that comes flexibility. That if I work all day on a Sunday, I can take Monday off and celebrate my 2 year old's birthday, and
Mhm.
nobody's gonna like tell me no. And so I can help people on a Sunday, and I can help people on a Saturday night or on a Wednesday really late at night. And then that gives me the flexibility as a mom, as a wife, as somebody who's like also running a household, to do what I need to do and still be present. And I think that's the coolest part, is that I help people with the largest purchase they'll ever make in their lives while also still having a life myself.
Mhm. That flexibility is super important. And I know there's a lot of moms out there that, are trying to balance everything. And we'll get into, you being a working mom in the back half of our conversation, but I think that's just so great too, that you do love running your own business and you also love the benefits that that type of a career can give you. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
What tips would you give to people who are interested in being a loan officer? They've got the flexibility, you've got the chance to like run your own thing. So what tips would you give to them?
So this one, I love this question because I keep highlighting all the great things about being a loan officer, but it also gets really tough. So I think one big tip I'd give is just to be prepared for the months of no commission, because when you're commission only, just like any job, things can happen with your loans, and you could have something closing at the end of March but needs to move to the beginning of April, and then now for all of March maybe you don't have anything closing, and just because of the way that everything lined up or happened or whatever, out of your control. And that happens not a lot, but it does happen. And when you're starting out, especially when you only have a few loans in that
Mm-hmm.
month, your business isn't at a point where it's flexible or fruitful just yet. And so I was put in a really fortunate position where I could be a loan partner or an assistant for a little bit to learn the ropes as I was bringing in my own business and developing my own relationships with social media leads or real estate leads. But I also had that income coming in to be able
Mm-hmm.
to provide for my bills and my life. And so I think that when you think about loan officers or any commission job like real estate and stuff, it's really important to be prepared for those months in the beginning of your career that you're not going to be bringing anything in. So whether that's like a spouse who is bringing in something, or you yourself, don't give up your full-time job just yet until you do have that steady income. Because that's one thing that people see is the flexibility and the great life and the social media posting and all this stuff. But in order for me to have gotten here, I sacrificed a lot of months of not being paid at all. And so I think that's important to touch on, is that, again, if you don't work, you don't get paid. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're working all the time.
Yeah, I see, your Instagram stories that Friday night at like 8:30. You're working on closing people and pre-approving them so that they can go and view houses on Saturday morning. And I give you a lot of kudos for that. And I think that is a really good point, that there is a period of ramp. How long did it take you to ramp up once made that switch from partner to a loan officer yourself?
So I would probably say it probably took me about a good year
Hmm.
to even adjust like myself with the fact that I wasn't getting this money every single month coming in. And so it took a good year for me to budget accordingly, because budgets are great when you have a set income coming in,
Hmm.
but budgets don't work so well when you have no idea like what could come in or what could come out, or whatever. With going commission only, I think that it's important for any business owner or any entrepreneur to understand that like it really does drive you
Hmm.
to do the things that you don't feel like doing,
Hmm.
because you know that it's not like a feeling. I always say your goals don't care how you feel. And that's very true, because in that first year that I did ramp up, I didn't feel like doing a lot of the stuff that I needed to do in order to get relationships with realtors, business content put out there, showing up on my social media leads. And so I think that it does take, at least about a year if you hustle enough.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's pulling back the curtain is so important for people, and having that real life example of like, here you are, pretty successful. And it even took you a significant amount of time to kind of just get your groove and find your mojo with the way that paychecks work in this business.
Exactly. Yeah. And just figuring out like how it all flows with budgeting as an entrepreneur. Like I have
Mhm.
an amazing advisor who a lot of financial advisors don't know how to help people who are business owners or are entrepreneurs who have that like irregular income. So I think that's also an important thing, is maybe talking to somebody like that sooner, so that you know what to expect when you are put into this role of, oh man, I'm not going to make anything this month, but next month I might make what I should have made in the last 6 months.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. That the variability can definitely be tough, but I'm sure when you see a paycheck like that, it just is really motivating that you're saying that you can see on paper, like, I am good at what I do. It hopefully makes up
Yes.
for some of the months that you don't necessarily see something.
Right. Or anything at all.
or anything at all. Yeah, very true. Very true. So you mentioned a little bit ago that 2 years ago you made the switch to that more referral based loan business. What was the difference, or what has been the difference in working for that more traditional bank versus this more entrepreneurial type of
Yeah.
employment?
So at the bank, I was very thankful to be a loan officer and licensed in all 50 states. So most people who work for banks are licensed in all 50 states. So I was able to start my marketing journey and my TikTok and my social media as advertising that I can help anybody anywhere.
Uh-huh.
That's pivoted just a little bit now that I'm not with a bank, because I personally am not licensed in all 50 states as I used to be. So that's been a major swing.
Mhm.
But it's also allowed me to then think about my building my own team who, are people who are licensed in all these different states.
Mhm.
And so this is
Hey.
my life. I knew this was gonna happen. Hey, mommy. You want to say hi really fast?
Hi, Costas. Good
Hi,
morning.
Papa. That's it. Yeah, you go to sleep. Here you go. I'm going to sleep. You can go to swings. Here you go.
Life of being a
Um,
working mom. Here we go.
this is it. This is what I work with. And so now that I'm with a different group of people, I always say that there's old people and then there's old mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you have to be an old person to have an old mindset. So I think when you start off somewhere like a bank, and it could be very different because things are moving very fast in our industry, but I was surrounded by a lot of like older mindsets. And so like I went viral for the first time and got 200 applications in overnight. I remember this. I think it was like in 2020 or 2019. And I remember telling somebody there that I went viral, and they were like, "Are you sick?" And I was like, "No, I mean like on the internet. I got a lot of leads last night, like in one night." And so I knew then that I had to make some sort of switch, because in order to grow, you have to be around people who are doing a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more than you, I guess, or
Mm-hmm.
just match the levels. And I was really grateful to be around my boss, and his wife were some of the like best mentors that I could have had. And even they were like, you're eventually going to outgrow it here. And when you find something different, like let us know and we'll be here for you. So that was really awesome to get that sort of mentorship. But now that I'm in a place where I'm truly like a mortgage advisor, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just competing for the lowest interest rate and the bank gives you like the lowest interest rate in the world. I'm like truly advising people on, it might not make sense to pay as much as the lowest interest rate costs, or it might not make sense to do this or this or this. And I never knew that world of like advisory until I moved over to where I am now with Annie Mac.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point too, that as you become, more of a subject matter expert, like you can offer more tools and resources to people at various points of their journeys. And it sounds like you definitely, got that base education, in the industry, learned from it, had a great boss who I'm sure mentored you in all the tips and tricks. And then now you're in a position that, you're sharing all of the advice that, well, not all of it, you got to hold some back for your clients, but you're sharing a lot of it like on socials, really positioning yourself as a subject matter expert in this. And as you said, you've sourced 200 leads in a night before.
Yeah, that was a crazy time. And I didn't even have a team. So I was like up for 3 straight nights just trying to figure out who, what, where. And that's when I realized that systems are really needed when you try to get in leads from online, or else you will just drown.
Yeah. You started several years ago and those views got, 1,000 views, pretty good for starting out. And, you've had videos that have gotten a couple million, and creating that huge lead pipeline. And that's all due to social media, TikTok, Instagram. What opportunities have come up because of your TikTok and Instagram presence in the last several years?
I mean, besides just most of my business and my leads coming from there, where I can help people buy a house or refinance, it's opened up a lot of doors with other creators in the space. And so I've I've developed this mentality that the people at the top are collaborating while the people at the bottom are competing. And I think when I was at the bank, there were a lot of high producers that would hide what they would do or things like
Hmm.
just their tactics of sales or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And opening this door into the creative world where other lenders or real estate agents are creating on social media,
Hmm.
no one gatekeeps. And
Yeah.
so that in itself has allowed like a huge opportunity for me to learn a lot and connect with these people. And through that, I've learned that I actually am really great at knowing how to brand or personally brand
Hmm.
or things that market myself, things that I would have never thought that just like a loan officer from Delaware would have the ability or the capability to do. And so through that, I've found a lot of people and then tapped into this like marketing side. And my husband does real estate marketing. So us together has really opened up a lot of doors in terms of just like creating those new businesses.
Definitely the definition of a power couple. The two of you all over socials. It's so inspirational. I know you gifted him like like a big branding shoot a couple months ago. Like, was that always top
Yeah.
of mind? It's like, oh, Theoni and Philip just taking over the world. And did you want to kind of memorialize that moment in that shoot? I'm so curious on how that one kind of came about.
Yeah. So I think that like Philip and I work, it's like weird, right? Because when I talk
Mhm.
to agents and I talk to lenders, I don't want to be like, oh, work with my husband's company. He's really, really good, you know? And so it was like not that legit yet where I could like plug it in. But he did help me with building everything in my back end. So, like, the reason why when I go viral, I'm not overwhelmed like I was when I first went viral and got those 200 leads is because of the systems that him and his company have helped me develop. And so I felt like the brand shoot was the one thing that we needed to like feel and look legit, which
Mhm.
sounds silly because it's just a bunch of pictures, right?
Yeah.
But just being like preparing, and our photographer Lena was amazing. She prepared us like we were on a Zoom call with her for 40 minutes. We went over like mood boards, outfits, like what we wanted to look like. And so that made it feel so much more real so that when people said things like, oh, you guys are a power couple or you work together, it like
Mhm.
was true. And so now our marketing, when we do talks or when we help small businesses or when we have brochures, those photos really make you look like you know what you're saying. Even if we did before, it like solidifies it with the very awesome brand photos.
Mhm. Yeah, they look amazing. They actually inspired me to get my own branding shoot done for my podcast. So it definitely inspired
I
me to
saw.
kind of just like, put that power suit on and feel confident in like what you're producing. So whether or not you knew it, like you inspired me to go and get something done to
You.
make my podcast feel like it was serious and like I was taking it very serious, which I am. Hopefully
And I
everyone
think
can
that
hear
you
that.
do. Yeah, and
Hmm.
I think that like it does help you take whatever it is more seriously, even if it's like a brand product. Imagine having a like entire studio set up with the brand itself or the product itself. Like it makes you feel more legit, and then it makes everybody else believe it too.
Hmm. Yeah, a little bit about, curating that image
Yeah,
of here I am, I'm an expert in this, or, I'm taking this really seriously, like pay attention almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm glad that you got it done. They looked great.
Thank you. Shout out to Christina Gavin Photography. She's great, based in the Bay Area. We'll put her in the show notes. We'll put Lena in the show notes too if anyone wants to get, inspired on the East or the West Coast.
Yeah, she does travel, so
All
but she
right.
does brand stuff particularly. That's all she does.
Cool. Cool, cool, cool. So we kind of steered away from social for a second there to talk a little bit about personal branding and marketing. But I'd love to hear what advice you would have for women who are looking to get active on social media, especially when it comes to like sourcing leads or generating demand for a business. It's like, what advice would you give for women out there looking to potentially replicate what you've been doing?
So I would say before you get started, you should know the pain points of who you are trying to reach. And so
Hmm.
people think that you need this like avatar or this person who you're talking to every time. And I think that marketing has slowly started to shift away from the avatar and it's the pain point. So like, what are you really, really good at solving? And then talk to that pain point, because that pain point isn't maybe a 26-year-old female. The pain point could be a 52-year-old female who didn't realize it, but is now like divorced and didn't think she'd be there and is starting all over again in her home buying journey. So
Mm-hmm.
that pain point might be the same as that 26-year-old avatar that you might think that you need to speak to. And so I think that the biggest mistake people do is before they start creating content and talking and all this stuff, they have an avatar. But really, like I said, it's the problem that you're trying to fix. And then what are you really good and what do you like to fix?
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, for me, I've developed a pain point of people who are really, really well qualified, but they're working with terrible mortgage advisors, like people who can't get it done for them. They can't get them to the closing table. And so when I started talking to them, I realized that it's not a demographic and it's not an age. It's a really big subset of people that have the same exact pain point. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think for women, we want to make sure that we're including everybody, but when you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's getting really specific with who your message is for. And then what do you like to do? Like your social's so cool because you can be a little selfish in picking and choosing. So like
Yeah.
for me, I don't like to do down payment assistance programs, but there's 100 other loan officers out there that do. And so it sounds like I don't want to help those people, but really I'm not best qualified to help them because I don't even like doing those types of
Yeah.
loans. So it's like telling and giving women that like okay to be a little selfish and know that like you're not supposed to make content that everybody
Mhm.
agrees with.
Because otherwise your content isn't going to speak to anyone. Be to your point, like,
Exactly.
so be a little bit selfish, do what really interests you, and people are going to naturally kind of follow and buy into that point of view.
Yeah. And it's fun to experiment too. Like
Mhm.
you might not know what your pain points are. So you might want to just cast a bigger net in the beginning and then figure out, hey, when I get these types of people in my DMs asking me these questions, I like to answer them more than these types of questions that I get.
Mhm.
But that all comes from just being consistent. And that's like anything you have to post in order to get some sort of data samples.
Yep.
So it's being consistent.
Yeah, that's true. What about diversifying platforms? I know you just started posting on Facebook several months ago, and that's a new platform for you in the way that you're, looking to source leads. What advice would you give to folks, especially women who are maybe thinking of starting out on just Instagram or just TikTok or just Facebook or just LinkedIn or whatever social they're thinking? How should they think about diversification?
So I think that that part of it actually comes way later
Mm-hmm.
because if you haven't started being consistent on one single platform yet, it's very daunting to think about posting on every single platform just because you
Mm-hmm.
want all these eyeballs on you. And to be honest, when you're first starting out with any sort of venture or new page or anything like that, you don't want a lot of eyes on you in the very beginning because you don't have bingeable content. And that's what I call like content that when a video does pop off, people can go to your page and then keep scrolling on your page because you have so much that they can consume and it's
Mm.
bingeable. And
Oh yeah.
so in the very beginning, I would say pick one platform. And so a lot of times, for example, I work with a lot of realtors that are heavy on Facebook, and that's just where a lot of their past clients are, a lot of their new clients, and they think they have to be on Instagram. And my husband always says, whatever works for you and whatever you're going to use is the best platform to go all in on. Once
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you've gotten the consistency of it, like I've gotten to a point where I know I'm going to post on TikTok, I know I'm going to post on Instagram, I've gotten those down. Now I started dabbling into Facebook because I actually have a lot of followers on there and a lot of friends. So, like, why not just try it out? But I
Mm-hmm.
think that that comes last. I don't think that if I was to start out, I would say post on Facebook and then post the same thing on LinkedIn and then post the same thing on TikTok because each platform is a little different. For
Mm-hmm.
me, TikTok is my lead generation. Instagram is where I like hold my community tight and kind of share like the ins and outs. And then Facebook has just become like my trying out things. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like testing what works, and which is really fun when you get to that point where it's not the same exact content on every platform.
I've heard that as well. And I don't know if I've listened to it with my attempts of marketing my podcast. So maybe I need to like double down. We're recording this when I'm about halfway through my season 1. So I've got some time to adjust and learn. So maybe it's a good thing that I'm talking to you right now because I have time to adjust. So thanks for that tip. There's obviously a lot of stuff in the news right now about real estate, commissions. What advice would you give to folks who are trying to either enter the space or who are currently navigating all of the changes that are coming about in the news?
Yeah. So I think it's really important, first and foremost, to realize that the media is going to blow everything out of proportion always. And
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're talking about the largest purchase you'll ever make in your life, which most Americans, it's a very hot button for. They
Mm-hmm.
will put anything in the news to scare real estate agents, to scare buyers, sellers, whoever. And so a lot of these headlines are very inaccurate, which I think is crazy that is still legal, but here we
Mm-hmm.
are.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to note because with that, we're always taught to take everything in the news with a grain of salt. And this could, I mean, it's literally the same thing.
Yeah.
And so what it really did was this lawsuit opened up transparency in which where does the money go that the sellers pay the agents? And
Mm-hmm.
so for a long time, people fight me on this word that I say that the standard was 6%, that if you sell your house, you're going to give 6% to real estate commissions. Now, that 6% doesn't go to one person. It usually goes towards the person who's selling your home
Mm-hmm.
and then the agent who's bringing that buyer. For a long time, people didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Some sellers didn't know that they were paying that buyer's side. And for the agents I work with, you had to always tell people. But now that it's shed light, that's what this big lawsuit did, is just really
Mm-hmm.
shed light on. There was a seller once upon a time who didn't know that. And then there were really good lawyers who took advantage of the fact that not a lot of consumers know. And then they took this case all the way up to the DOJ. And
Mm-hmm.
so what that did, I think, is just create a very educated consumer. And us as lenders, we used to make back before 2008 like 7% on a loan, and there
Wow.
was no limitation on like the amount of money that you could just put whatever you wanted, and people just thought, okay, well, that's how much, I guess the loan officer makes, and that's how much the loan fees are. So when that happened to us in 2009, that's why now with Quicken Loans and all these online industries, we have to now provide an immense amount of value and show people why we are worth whatever you're paying your loan officer. And so that didn't change ever. It's just people ask. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's going to be the same thing with real estate agents. Nothing has changed in the way that people are getting paid. It's just, hey, before I pay you this much, what value are you going to be bringing to
Mm-hmm.
the table? So instead of real estate agents kind of showing it like we can show it, we have to tell people up front, by not using me, by not using my expertise, here's what could happen. And so real estate agents are just going to shift in that way and be that value basically has to be given up front, not at the closing table anymore.
Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what you're doing on TikTok right now with like all this lead
Yeah.
generation? You're posting all these short form clips to kind of just put that bingeable content, as you mentioned, out
Yes.
there.
Yes. And I think that for me, I'm a big proponent in education. I mean, that's why I started going online and talking about how to buy a house, because we weren't taught about this stuff in
Mm-hmm.
school. We paid a ton of money for college and nobody knows how to buy a house. And
Yep.
so I think for me, I'm happy that this is happening because it's making the consumer way more educated. And so for me, when I get leads online, by the point that they contact me, they've already learned so much from my content, because a lot of this stuff you could Google, honestly. Like, I'm not giving away my secrets. It's
Yeah.
just I'm doing it, and I'm doing it consistently in a way that people understand, and it's not sketchy. And I'm disclosing everything up front. Like, hey, I'm not the cheapest lender in the world, and there is cheaper than me, but I provide this immense amount of value that
Mm-hmm.
you get by not even talking to me. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
you just get from my content.
Mm-hmm.
So I think real estate agents are just going to have to do the same thing if they're not already.
Mm-hmm. Always being on your toes, being able to pivot as needed and responding to what your potential buyer is looking for. And that changes over time too, and as you mentioned, it's always nice to experiment and test out what's going on and what's going to really resonate with people.
Yeah. One thing is for sure in real estate, it's always going to change. I mean, just in the last 2 years with these rates, like there's been a lot of lenders who have left the industry in just the last 24 months. So, and I think that's not a bad thing. Like just with real estate agents and lenders, I think it should. I think there's a lot of us in this field and a lot of bad ones. And then there are really a lot of like good ones who do provide that value and should be getting paid as much as they are worth. And they're not because you have a bunch of people who are just in here to make a quick buck and don't really care about the consumer.
Yeah, we obviously can tell that you care about the consumer. And I wonder if it's a little bit about being a mom and being a working mom. And, you've really spent the last couple of years, you and your husband raising our little guest earlier in the podcast, Costas, who's 2. What's it been like being a full-time working mom? You mentioned earlier you've loved the flexibility that this industry provides for you. What has been your experience?
It's really fucking hard. Can I say that? Can I
Yeah,
say
of
the F
course you
word?
can say that.
It's just kind of like on brand. I wish that people, somebody, anyone knew enough. Like I know my mom didn't, and my parents are both entrepreneurs, but they did things very differently than the way that I'm doing them. So I like no one could prepare you for just like the shit show that you're thrown into, especially when you're trying to build a business from the ground up and then also build a personal brand and then also be a good mom and then also make sure you're like home present, not just in an office all day. And so like I've learned the biggest thing is I have to give myself grace, like doing this here at home today. Like I used to be a perfectionist where I was like, if I don't look really good and I'm not really fit, I can't make content. If the lighting is off and this and that, I can't make content. And now with having a kid, like if a client's calling me and they're closing next week and they are freaking out about something, I
Mhm.
have to answer that call, whether he's having a breakdown or he's on the potty or he's in the bathtub or,
Yep.
so it's like, it really takes a level of discipline. And then when you have those conversations, I used to find myself going into really bad moods after. Like I would almost blame
Mhm.
it on the fact that Costas was in the bathtub while this client was calling me, and now I have to be pissed for the rest of the night. And so it takes a really long time, and it actually takes work to not think those things because
Mhm.
I think people respect you more and see that you're actually way better than that online lender, random lender
Mhm.
who is sitting in a cubicle all day because you are trying to be a mom and provide for your family and you're willing to do it under any circumstance. And
Mhm.
so it takes a really long time to make that mindset switch because as a perfectionist, like I wouldn't do things if they weren't perfect. And now
Yeah.
I've had to adapt because I have no choice. Like I don't have any ability to just choose that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, that's really honest, and I really appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that. How do you feel like you've grown as a person and as a professional now that you have a kid? Or no,
Man,
do you consider yourself a perfectionist anymore?
no, not at all. I used to like make my bed every morning. I used to go to bed and there would be no dishes in the sink. Like my house was always just perfect and like spotless before I would go to bed. I have learned to just live in the chaos, and probably because now the algorithm knows me so well, and so I'm getting these like reels that are like it's not going to be like this forever and this is their childhood, and so I'm
Yeah.
like okay, like that's true. It's not just me anymore. Um, and so I think I've definitely grown. I used to be very selfish. I think that's like the word. And it was always about me. Like if I didn't feel good going to bed, then I needed to change it. And so
Mhm.
now when you become a mom, you like physically cannot be selfish anymore because you have this tiny little human who shares half your cells and like you made them. And so you can't really, and they have their own autonomy, right? Like they do
Mhm.
whatever they want. And so I think that it was kind of a wake up call for me because I needed to learn how to do things in the imperfect. And it's the same thing about posting content. Like people don't post because they don't think it's curated or perfect enough or their message is off or whatever. And so that's why I think I'm such a big catalyst for social media and like I love it. And the same thing with buying a house. Like I can tell people this is going to feel chaotic and I know how that feels,
Yeah.
but like we're going to get through it together and we're going to just do it in the chaos. And so I think that that's how I've definitely developed just personally and professionally. I like embrace the chaos almost, and the people who like that just gravitate towards me. And then I've also gotten people who are like, we don't like that. Every time we call you, we hear a toddler in the back. And okay, great. Then like I'm not the loan officer for you. And
Mhm.
that's been actually really nice because like I said, as a woman, we want to please everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a really awesome reminder that those people were going to find something in the transaction to not want to work with me anyway. So I'd rather it be upfront than it be, a week before closing when I did all this work.
Because you only get paid when they close, right? And so you don't want to
We
waste
actually
your
get paid
time.
we actually get paid like a month later.
Yeah.
So everything's like backlogged.
Uh-huh. So you really don't want to waste your time doing all this work for someone that at the end of the day is like, oh, nah, there's this little ick that I don't like. And
Right.
yeah, you want to work with good people that work with you and like who you are, um, before they want like this picture perfect partnership,
Yeah.
basically.
And again, it's hard. It
Mhm.
really is hard because I still know a lot of loan officers who probably look down on the way that I do things and they think like, how do you not go into the office more times than not in a week? And I do have an office I can go into and I try to get there, at least once a week, but most of the time I am home and most of the time
Mhm.
I am in my PJs. But like if I can do it like that now, I know that my kids will grow up at some point and then I'll wear the trousers and the heels and the freaking, suit to work and I'll
Mhm.
do that for many, many years. If I can do that in my PJs now, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. You actually just mentioned something that's a little bit different than we mentioned earlier. You said kids, plural.
Oh, yes.
So, in our prep call, you shared that y'all are expecting your second kid, and you just announced it on socials that you're
Yes.
expecting a baby girl, which is so so exciting. Congratulations!
Thank you.
How are you thinking about this next go around of having another baby, managing your loan business, maintaining social media accounts? The chaos is going to get more chaotic. How are you kind of prepping for this next phase of life?
Um, I feel like I am in almost like a sprint mode right
Mhm.
now. I think that I spent the last year of my business developing leads and intakes and stuff and developing systems. And now it's tweaking those systems and putting the right people in place. So I'm actively hiring a loan partner for just my social media leads, which is really awesome. And I think that that's going to give me a lot of flexibility when this next baby comes. Because one thing that I will mention is when I first had Costas, I was on my email like 2 hours after I pushed him out, like at the hospital, like on the table. And I used to say that to people all the time, especially real estate agents, because I thought that that showed my dedication to doing this. And then I realized, wait, why am I flaunting that? That actually is terrible. Like I missed out on the first day of his life and taking all of that in because there were three closings and he was born on a Friday and I needed to check my email to make sure everything was fine and people had questions. Like so for this go around, instead of being so dedicated to, that, I think I can choose that I'm okay with not doing that anymore. And I'm going to give myself some time. And again, in this industry, if you don't work, you don't get paid. And that goes for
Mhm.
maternity leave.
Yeah.
So we don't get any of that. And
Mhm.
so I think that it's now setting myself up and setting these systems and these people in place so that I can take at least like a week or two. And honestly, I like what I do. So it's not like dreadful for me to think about coming back to
Yeah.
it. And I can do it from a hospital bed or from nursing at my house, like whatever. But I think that this time I'm going to be very cautious on trying to make sure that I give myself that break and I take it all in because I didn't get that the first time around. I thought I had something to prove
Mhm.
by, hey, I had a baby, but also like I'm still a professional and please still send me loans and like I'm not just gonna be a mom and nothing else. But really being a mom should be your number one priority because if I'm a better mom, I'm a better loan officer.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. I love that you just said you're gonna hire a loan partner to kind of help you in this, first couple of weeks or months of your new baby. Also, major kudos that you're in a point that you can hire an employee. Like, can we just do a virtual high five? Like, that is so, so great. Congratulations that your business has kind of gotten to that point that can support another person. I'd love to touch a little bit more on like asking for help as a mom, because I feel like, I mean, I'm not a mom, but I feel like moms don't ask for help enough. They kind of try to put this face on of like, oh, I can do it all. Look at me. I'm this power mom, super mom. But you just mentioned, you're going to get some help in your business. How else are you thinking about leveraging community or family or other or systems in ways to help you navigate being a working mom? And no one's going to get it perfect, but being able to ask for help, it seems like, is what you're doing to be able to maintain your business in these next several months. So how are you kind of thinking about help as well in this new phase?
Yeah, we have an amazing nanny that we found in August, because of the choice that Philip and I made of not vaccinating. We can't send him to daycare, and so we're also homeschooling. We're crazy, but because we made that decision, we also have the ability, and we're grateful to have the ability to do that. So I think that a nanny was really important early on. We are very inconsistent with her in terms of like when we need her because of our work schedules, and we can be home a lot. But I think that having a nanny or having backup, whether that's like someone inconsistently or someone like twice a month and that they're coming, can help so much. I live about 2.5 hours away from my parents, and they're currently building a house that's 20 minutes down the street. So whenever that gets done, I'm going to be like mode push to try to get them moved down here full time, because I have such a big family, and it's so nice when I do visit. And I'm always traveling. If you see on my story, so I'm always staying with my mom to go to places in Baltimore and so on. And so I think that is going to be key. And a lot of what I do, it's in my bio, but I want to retire my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I want to get to a point where I can put them on payroll as my nannies or as my childcare, and then I can continue to build businesses with Philip. And so I think that to do all those things, you need to leverage the help when it feels like you can't afford the help, or it feels like you don't want the help.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not supposed to ever feel like, okay, I've gotten to a point where like now I'm going to ask for help. And so I think that giving yourself that okay to realize you will never get to that point where it feels okay to ask for help. You do it when you're drowning. You do it when it feels like you shouldn't be asking for help. You do it when you feel like, okay, but I can probably take on more, but your bandwidth, like in the back of your mind, is totally full and you cannot take any more on. And then that's when you go into like a really dark place as a mom, and it's really tough to get out of that. And then you start to like get mad at your husband for small things, and you start to get mad at your kids, and you start to get mad at yourself. And so I think asking for help in any capacity will shed light on when is it that like your brain tells you you need help, but you're fighting it. And that's different for everybody.
What advice would you give to other moms who might be in your situation?
Probably reach out to whoever you feel like is comfortable in your life to talk to about that stuff. So for me, it's my mom. Like I'll just call her and I'll be like, am I crazy? Like what's going on? And she'll be like, you're taking on a lot. And then I think like developing communication styles with your partner or your husband is really, really important. And like I said, I used to be really selfish, and I think that part of me still is prevalent in like my marriage, which is good because I can say like selfishly, I need you to step it up here, or like, I need you to do this. And so I think that as moms, it's very different. We could have like an entire podcast on this. Being a dad, being a mom is very different because you got 9 months to prepare physically and like mentally. You literally can never forget that you're about to have a kid.
Yeah.
And so when you have the baby, you've already been prepping, whereas the dad, like that's day one of their parenting. So for them to catch up on 9 months of you prepping is impossible to ask for. But what you can do is set expectations in ways of, I need you to do this. And men's brains are very simple. So like, you just need to ask to very small things, and usually they do it. And if you don't feel like that is that relationship with your partner, it becomes really hard to live in the same household. So I definitely encourage, and like biggest tip is before you're expecting or when you're expecting, and especially if you're an entrepreneur doing all this as well, you have to have conversations on how to have conversations
Mhm.
with your spouse so that you're never found in a situation where you just are miserable in your own house and in your own head.
It sounds like it's a lot of that communication, that advanced planning, all that kind of prep work to make sure that people can be on the same page. And if you fall off the same page, you have tools and systems in place to kind of get there, get back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds technical, and it might be. And it definitely takes some fun out of like your marriage will never be the same before you had kids. Like it just isn't. There's no like, it probably comes back after your kids are older for sure, but you need to be like scheduled and planned, and like you almost need to treat your marriage like a business in order for it to run the same way
hmm
and successfully.
Yeah. You're obviously successful in business. So hopefully you are equally successful in marriage.
It's been a fun drive.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of family, you've just touched on your husband. We just talked about being a mom with your kids or kid and future kids,
Yes.
and your parents and having your family potentially move close to you. And you've really talked on social media about being a future billionaire. I want our listeners to hear that word again, billionaire with a B, not an M, not millionaire, billionaire with a B. How do you approach having such an aspirational goal and then also stay motivated to take the steps you need to get
The honest answer is I am delusional as shit.
there?
So I think that you need some of that delusion, because if 10 years ago you told me I had this crazy social media following, and for some people it's not crazy, for some people it is, for me it is, I would have never believed you and been like, that's not me. Maybe I'll have like a couple thousand and like, yeah, I'll talk to people, but that's not me. I'll never have that influence. And so when I realized like, holy crap, I'm only 27 years old and I've gotten to hear what's the next 10 years going to look like if I actually believed what I didn't believe about myself being here 10 years ago.
hmm
So for me, I was like, I'm probably going to be a billionaire. And it's one of those things like you start to manifest and things just start coming to you. And so as I've shifted this mindset into thinking I'm going to be a billionaire, I won't be a billionaire by just originating loans. I
hmm
can't be, I would literally die. But I can be a billionaire by influence on social media and by speaking engagements and by having my own marketing company and by diversifying my assets and by
hmm
investing in real estate and all this stuff. And so all of these things started to come to light, and the opportunity started to arise when I made that mind shift of, okay, wait a second, I'm just going to believe that I'm already there and then
hmm
reverse engineer how I get there.
Love that. So inspirational. I think you just mentioned 7 things, and they always say there's like this statistic out there, or there's a lot of books on it, and I think there's just a lot of content about. I think you have to have 7 streams of income to become a millionaire, and it sounds like you've definitely got those ideas floating out there in your brain. If you're not there yet, like you will be at that magic number sooner rather than
Yeah.
later. What do you kind of imagine your career to look like in the next 5 to 10 years? You mentioned potentially starting some businesses, continuing on socials, continuing in the loan business. What do you kind of imagine these next 5 to 10 years to be like?
Probably have a team of some sort
hmm
for my loan originating side of things. So we have an office here in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and there's one loan partner already. She works with all of us on the team. So she's here. And so growing that where I can like in person see these people, I think that's going to be one big thing that I'm going to try to do. So I have a group of like content creators slash like loan officers. And then I think also like really diving into the marketing side of things, because that gets me just as excited and hype as helping a first time home buyer close on their first deal. So just tapping into that, I think will allow me to have more speaking engagements, coach people on social media, and then really help like brands and businesses with their personal branding, because that just makes me so happy. And it gives me the creativity side that I need in order to also help people do the loans. Like, I don't think I'll ever tap out of the mortgage side of things, because that is the biggest investment they'll make. And I always want to be a part of that part of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then also at the same time, building these personal brands for individuals and businesses. So those are probably like the two things that I can think of in the next 5 years that I will be very heavily involved in.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love it. It's very inspirational to hear these like big goals, wanting to retire your parents, wanting to be a billionaire, and kind of just see how you're navigating that as a working mom, especially a mom that works from home a lot of times.
All the
So
time.
so to close out our conversation today, I'd love to hear if you've got a favorite inspirational quote or saying or phrase or a piece of advice that is always in the back of your head, that we can kind of leave our listeners with today.
So I said one earlier, but I'll come up with another one too, because one popped up. So your goals don't care how you feel, is one of my favorite ones, because that started when I didn't feel like going to the gym in 2020, when I was really unhealthy and I was inside, just like I'm sure a lot of people were, and like drinking and eating all the time and whatever. And I just remember developing that mindset of, well, Theoni, your goals don't care how you feel right now. They don't care that you're tired or that it's cold outside or that whatever. And then that transferred over to my business. And then the other one, which sounds kind of crazy, but this morning I was going through my phone, organizing it, and there's an app that's called We Croak. And 7 times a day, it reminds you that you'll die one day, which I know sounds nuts. But the happiest like monks, people in the world or whatever, implement this practice in their day-to-day life, where they reflect on the fact that they're going to die 7 times a day. And that in turn has made them the happiest people, because they have that reminder that like, hey, don't take today for granted, do whatever you were going to do. And so I had the app, and like just sitting here talking, I've gotten 2 notifications, and I was like, oh my God, wait, I'm going to die one day. And I don't know if that's like super inspirational, or maybe some people think it's morbid, but for me, it's like a great reminder that you're only here for X amount of years and we don't know how many. And so it's like, make it count and just do whatever, because who cares? We're all going to end in the same place anyway one day.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. That's so true. It could be morbid, but I actually think it is really motivational, that it forces you to live in the present, find the happiness in your day to day, because we don't know how long we're going to be here, and just to make the most out of our life.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Theoni, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. This was such a great conversation. I hope our listeners learned a little bit about being a loan officer, how to navigate social media, what it's been like being a working mom. And I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there listening to this who are just going to take what you said and kind of say, oh, thank God someone gets it, because a lot of moms don't ask for help. A lot of moms don't put it out there that, it's hard. And I really appreciate your honesty, your transparency on like what your life is like, both as an entrepreneur and as a mom. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so happy to be here. And for anybody who's listening, my DMs are always open to anyone who wants to ever slide in for anything, mom life, entrepreneurial life, anything. So thanks for having me, Audrey.
Yeah, sure thing. We'll put all of the ways to contact you in the show notes as well. So listeners, if you want to reach out, don't worry, we got you. Thank you so much again, Theoni.
Of course.
Wow, what a woman. Theoni is so authentic, and I'm just so thrilled that she was able to share her real life story with us about being a mom and an entrepreneur using social media to kick ass in her mortgage business. If you liked this episode, please share this conversation with the fabulous gal pals in your life, because hearing about a woman taking the world by storm with a toddler in tow could lead another woman just like you to think, if she can do it among all of that chaos, so can I. Remember to check out the show notes for everything you need to connect with Theoni the lender and me, Audrey the career woman. While it's hard for me to believe it, this was the season 1 finale of Women Just Like You. So if you want to stay up to date with all things career development and behind the scenes of the show, then sign up at the link in the show notes and head on over to my Instagram, Audrey the career woman. And to make sure you don't miss season 2 of the podcast later this year, like, subscribe, rate, and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. And with that, see you on air soon, gals. Bye.